Hi, I'm Lex Van Dyck. I'm the supplier coordinator with Fireweed Food Hub, and we're back to talk again about wholesaling to retailers. In this video, we're talking a little bit about packaging, labeling, and marketing yourself to the retailer. Retailers have really specific requirements for labeling. Lots of these are legal requirements, so we'll go through those details in depth. Your labels need to include the name of your product. So if it's pork chops, it needs to say that. If it has a copyrighted name, that should be on there as well. It needs to include the weight of the product on the label or the packaging. Your farm name should be included. If it's processed off farm, so if you work with a butcher that is packing your meat, for example, the processor's location and contact information needs to be included on that label as well. Your label should include either the pack date or a durable life date, and it depends a little bit based on product. Pack date is usually okay for meat products that are going to be frozen. Durable life date would be needed for a fresh meat product and often for dry goods that are going to go on a store shelf. If there are any particular storage requirements for your product, those should be named on the label as well. So if they need to be refrigerated, it should say that. If it needs to be kept frozen, if it should be stored in a cool, dry place, those things should be listed on that label. In terms of nutrition facts tables, these are required for products that have 2 or more ingredients, or if it's a ground meat product. So even if your ground meat has only that one ingredient, it's still going to need this. A nutrition facts table is a little bit more of a time and financial investment to include on your label. So you might want to work with the business development specialists at Manitoba Agriculture to get more information before you start working on this. And there's also more information on the Food and Beverage Manitoba website, which we'll link below. The nutrition facts table is going to be developed in partnership with a lab. So what they're going to do is test a sample of your product and determine the exact nutritional content of it. And then you're going to be able to translate that to a nutrition facts table that communicates the actual nutritional content over a serving of your product. Your packaging for retail should be durable and attractive. It needs to hold up in a retail environment with people interacting with your product on the shelf, and it also needs to look good and pull in potential consumers. If you are working with a meat product, vacuum packed meat generally sells best in clear plastic. Customers like to be able to see the meat product through the packaging, so brown butcher paper isn't a great choice for a retail product in that meat category. If you're working with tender produce, you might want to consider plastic clamshells. I have some examples here from Aurora Farm, and what they work with is a compostable plastic clamshell. So these look really great. They are environmentally friendly, and they keep products in really good condition. So they have a couple of different sizes that they're using. This larger size is more often used in a wholesale food service environment, but these smaller sizes are a really great fit for retail. So this little one holds about 1 bunch of herbs, and this slightly larger one can hold just a little bit more, slightly larger volume. These are really great for maintaining your product over a period of time, but you might want to consider replicating something like what Aurora Farm is doing. They have a compostable absorbent pad in the bottom of these containers when they are using them for product. And what this pad is doing is it's keeping the moisture content reasonably high in the package, so you're not seeing the edges of the herbs dry out, or edible flowers that they also sell are staying in really good condition. The humidity is high enough, but you're also not seeing condensation gathering on the bottom and causing a little bit of like rot and browning in the bottom of the package. So that's a really great fit for those tender pieces of produce. If you're working with bulk produce, those are generally going to be sold in larger volumes, so case sizes. We, at the Food Hub, generally use a bin liner, so we keep 2 sizes around. The smaller size works really well for approximately a 25-pound case of something like potatoes or beets, and also works for around 6 to 10 heads of lettuce or those sorts of quantities of leafy greens. And then we have a larger bin liner that goes in a larger box. This works nicely for 12 plus heads of lettuce, bunched kale, that sort of thing, or 50-pound roughly cases of storage vegetables. And we're putting those bin liners inside of 2 different sizes of box. So we're using a box about this size for those smaller, approximately 25-pound cases of product. And then we are using a larger box, a little bit longer, and about the same depth, like this, for those 50-pound case sizes. The size of the box does really matter. We don't want your product getting crushed, and you want to make sure that if you're packing directly into that box, that you are lining it with a bin liner, keeping the moisture in the product and not having it dry out in the cooler. Using a bin liner is going to help it to arrive in really good condition when it gets to the retailer. Those requirements are going to be customer specific, and they may change from year to year and from customer to customer. So if you're working with the Food Hub, we're going to be following up with customers regularly, and you'll want to check back annually at least to see if anything has changed in terms of our standards for packaging. We'll be consulting with customers to try to make that easy for producers. When you're thinking about branding your products for retail, you want to make sure that you're using a really clean, attractive packaging or label. It needs to include your logo for your business, and you want to make sure that you have a professionally developed logo. So Aurora Farms packaging is a really good example again of that. These are used for produce, so they don't require all of those label details we talked about earlier, but they do have their nice, clean, professional looking logo prominently displayed on their packaging. And that's really what you want. You want the consumer to associate the product they take home with your business in addition to the retailer's business. Getting your product included in a retailer's space is going to involve convincing that retailer of the value of your product, and you're going to do that by communicating your competitive advantage. So it's not a good idea for a small producer to rely on price as your competitive advantage. Larger competitors can often outdo you in terms of economies of scale and bring their price a little bit lower. So what you do want to rely on is any argument you can make to the retailer that you're able to grow the section of the store where you'd like your product to be included. Retailers are looking to bring on products that bring in new customers or attract people who shop in other sections of the store to begin shopping the section that your product is going to be listed in. So when you think about growing the section, you don't want to make arguments to a retailer that sound like your product is going to take sales away from an existing product on their shelves. You want to really focus on how you can meet an unserved demand that exists among their existing customer base or that could bring in new shoppers to their store. You might do that by communicating around some gaps that you see in their product lineup, and we can frame that as gaps in the market that the retailer is not able to fill without your product. We don't want to focus on gaps that the retailer has created. We want to frame it as an industry gap that you are able to fill. The other piece that we often want to focus on as local suppliers would be these statistics that Manitoba Ag has gathered. They did some surveying and found that around 78% of Manitobans say that they would buy more local food if it was available in the places that they're already shopping for food. So making that argument to a retailer that there is this significant demand among a really wide base of shoppers is really important, and that's something that we as a distributor are going to use when we communicate about your product to a potential retail customer as well. I have a few questions that I want to share with you that you might think through and then communicate those answers to your distributor, Fireweed in this case. They're things that if we know these things about your product and about your operation, it's going to really help us to effectively communicate the value of your product and tell your product and farm's story to a retailer. So I'm going to share those questions now. The first question is, where are you growing your product? If there is any impact of the type of soil that you're growing in that might change the quality of the final product, we want to know about that. So if the particular soil at your farm is going to have some impact on the product, make it better in some way, perhaps it leads to more acidic tomatoes or something of the sort, we want to hear about that and we can share that with the retailer. We also want to know why you think your product is better because it's grown locally, and that's an important piece to communicate. Retailers are excited to hear about the real benefits of the product that you are offering. We also want to know what differences do your handling and production practices make in terms of the final product. So if you're doing something different from potentially other producers that makes your product last longer or makes it safer perhaps, those are things that are really valuable to communicate with the retailer. We also want to know any details you can tell us about the product that are going to help us to sell it. So what would you say about this product at the farmer's market if you're making a pitch to a potential customer? Those kinds of details are going to help us translate that to a retail environment. And if there's anything else you can think of that helps us to tell the story of your farm or your product, you can add those in as well. As I mentioned earlier, there are lots of resources that you can seek out in Manitoba for support on this process of getting into retail. We talked earlier about Manitoba Ag's business development specialists, and they're very happy to support. There's also lots of resources on their website. Food and Beverage Manitoba's website is full of resources as well. You're welcome to contact us at Fireweed. I'm really happy to support suppliers who are working on adjusting their operations and to answer any questions that you might have. And then we're also going to link a resource document below with some more ideas of places you might look for support and information. We'd like to take a moment to thank the organizations and individuals who have helped us to make this project happen. First, I'd like to thank Food and Beverage Manitoba for providing generous support to this video project and the larger wholesale readiness project that it's part of. I'd also like to thank the province of Manitoba for their funding and support. We want to thank the Lord Roberts Community Centre for sharing this space with us to film in. And we want to thank the Food Hub's suppliers and customers who have shared their knowledge and experience with us, helping us to evolve and grow throughout this project. I also want to thank Jeff Van Dyck for sharing all his knowledge and expertise with us around retail and wholesale that has really informed the basis of this video.